All right, here we go. All right, everybody, thank you for being here on time. We want to be sure to honor that. We really appreciate it. We know you've had a long day. So thank you so much. Great, no worries at all, Jessica. A-okay. And you by yourself from Lincoln. Okay, thanks so much. Really appreciate that, everybody. All righty, so to start our day today, will you think about what is your favorite outdoor activity in the spring? And will you type into the chat box, what is your favorite outdoor activity in the spring? Thanks, Anne, appreciate it. Hiking. Riding bikes, that's great, Caradine. Hiking. What else is your favorite activity in the spring? Give you about 15 more seconds. Oh, yes. I used to love that too, actually, watching your kids play spring sports. I used to love that too on the semi-sunny days. We live in Seattle, so that used to be fun. Baseball in particular, because you can smell the grass in the spring. That's great. I thought maybe somebody would put in gardening. So that was one that surprised me, is that no one said put in their garden or plant their flowers. Awesome. All right, so let's get right to it today. We have some very specific work today, and that is, let me double check here. Okay. Oh, great. Thank you so much, Monticello. Appreciate that. Okay. So we're doing some very specific work, working on the relationship or the understanding of spelling and or encoding, and really understand how to help our students with the idea of spelling, and that it has a relationship to decoding, and yet it has its own space in terms of what the brain is doing. So we're going to talk about what the work is and how we think about spelling and encoding and how we deliver instructional routines that help our kids with that work. So very precise work today. The challenge of spelling or encoding is that it's tricky because of the 250 graphemes that we have in our language to represent the 44 sounds. Very similar to decoding, those spelling patterns, because there are so many, give us some tricky things to learn. Also, we have a unique spelling system because our spelling comes from origins in multiple languages. So Greek origin, Latin origin, and we have many different ways in different languages of spelling and pronouncing words that then affect their spelling. And then the bottom one, words with complex spelling patterns, places a greater burden on students' memory, their working memory, until they're orthographically mapped for long-term memory, makes spelling particularly hard for kids. So let's talk about the brain. Now, as you know, all of the work that we do is based on what is happening in the brain and what are the instructional approaches that we deliver that are really meant to structure the brain in a way that supports reading. So this, a lot of times people will say, if students can decode the words, that should transfer to spelling. If they know how to read those spelling patterns, it should transfer to spelling. But in actuality, it is a different task within the brain. So decoding is print to brain or print to speech. And what's required of the brain to do that decoding work is to see the word, to assign the sounds to those spelling patterns and blend those sounds together into a word. So once you know the sound that's represented by AI, reading the word train, all you're doing is seeing the pattern, assigning the sounds, and blending those together. That is a critical task that we work on all the time with our kids, is assigning the spelling pattern, blending it together, assigning the spelling pattern, blending that word together. That's what's happening in the brain with decoding. Encoding or spelling is actually brain or speech to print. So you hear first and then you represent those spelling patterns. It is a different task than print to brain. So what's required for encoding is more complex, actually. They hear the word. So if I say the word train, so I hear the word, the first thing my brain has to do is segment all of the sounds within train. The t, a, n. I have to hear the sounds and hold them in the proper order. Then I have to go back and assign a spelling pattern for each one of those sounds. And when I listen to the spelling pattern of A, I have several patterns to choose from when I hear the sound train, A in train. I have a I have a Y, I have a consonant E. Those are just three very common choices that I have. So I have to hear the sound in order and assign the correct spelling pattern. That's the tricky part for children with spelling. Then I have to write each of those spelling patterns down in the correct order. So the task for spelling is much more complex than the task for decoding. There are just more steps and more choices that my brain has to make. Anything you might, and I know you're just enjoying the time with us, Shelby, but anything you might add to this particular slide?
No, nothing I would add. I'm just going to place a link into the chat box that is just a reference to everything that you just said. It's a Reading Rockets article. It's about print to speech and speech to print. And if they wanted to just copy that link and tuck it away for a future read in their spare time. So really good article.
Excellent. So a lot of times when we have a reader who is a pretty good reader, but their spelling is behind their ability to read, a lot of times parents aren't really sure about this, and sometimes we aren't either. That is actually a different task, and that we can support our students with the encoding work. It's just that we would do that in a very intentional way. So that's how we begin to think about encoding or spelling, is really knowing the difference between decoding and encoding. So will you type into the chat box for a minute? What would be something that that I said that was confirmed for you, or maybe something that you are thinking about differently now, just based on this one slide? So please take a minute and type into the chat box what might be one thing that's either confirmed for you or something that might be new based on the things that we've just talked about so far. And for those of you in groups, thank you so much for having somebody represent the group. One, you hear the word first and then it's represented. The other one, you see the word and then you actually blend your way through it. Yeah, excellent. What else? Nice job. Thanks so much, Monticello. Segmenting those sounds, right? Rather than blending them. In decoding, we blend them together. And in encoding, we have to segment them to be able to represent them. Beautiful. Love that. Yes. Isn't that right, Anne? How do we make the right choice on which letters to use for a sound? Yeah. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. It's very tricky for students. And the short answer is until those words have been orthographically mapped into long-term memory, they aren't stored in terms of automatic retrieval. And so it is work every time until those words are mapped. Yeah, that's really great. We'll talk about that in just a minute. All right. All right. Thank you so much for those of you who responded. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's go on just a little bit. I want you to think a little, and you do not have to respond here. This is a quiet reflection. How are you currently teaching and supporting spelling or encoding? So I'm just going to do 1 minute of silence. I want you to think about all through the week. How are you currently teaching and supporting spelling or encoding? What do the words look like? How do you do that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? How are you currently supporting them? And I'm just going to be quiet for a minute, and you do not need to type in the chat box. This is not a true confession. You just need to think for a minute and go. All right, and close. So we thought a little bit about how you are currently teaching encoding or spelling, and it could be, I'm not, that would be okay. It could be on Monday, I give a pre-test, then they practice at home, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Friday, I give a test. That could be something you said. It could be that the words have all of the similar spelling patterns so that they are practicing and reinforcing those spelling patterns. That could be something you've said to yourself. It could be that you are, that there are 3 or more lists in your room and that kids have lists that are differentiated based on their skills. It could be that you said that we do our spelling work right out of our reading program. So I do the activities with the spelling program right within the reading program. Those may just be a few things that you said to yourself in your quiet reflection today, and whatever you said was absolutely okay. We're going to talk about 2 strategies that can improve spelling or encoding. And the first one is a multimodality or multisensory spelling practice. So this comes, many of you have actually taken the dyslexia 4-hour dyslexia training. And you know that in that training that when we are working with students with dyslexia or students who are struggling with reading, oftentimes we need to provide a multisensory approach for those students. So when we look at that today, it is a way that we support students with encoding to be able to help them map those words into long-term memory. Then another is encoding word chaining. So we haven't directly talked about this as a cohort, so we will spend some time here as well. So let's work on the first one for just a moment. And the first one is the multimodality or multisensory instruction. Here are the recommendations that we use when we are helping students work with the process of orthographically mapping the words into long-term memory, because that's actually the goal. Students need to hear it. They need to say it. They need to say the sounds. They need to write it. They need to spell it. And then they need to read it with each word. So when we are providing that practice for them, we want to think about that multimodality approach of hearing it, say the sounds, write it, spell it, and read it. So it would go something like this. The word is train. What's the word? Train. Say the sounds in train. T, a, n. pick up your pen and write the word train. They write the word, spell the word train with me. T-R-A-I-N. What's the word? Train. So that would be an example of providing them with that multimodality support in practicing so that they hear it, say the sounds, write it, spell it, and read it. So a couple of things that we think about with this are the tricky spelling patterns. A suggestion would be that you have your spelling patterns. So if I had the word train, the spelling card I would have up would be the acorn card or the long A card. And I would actually point directly to that AI. And I would say, boys and girls, for this word, we're going to use the AI spelling pattern. So I don't want children guessing. So you wrote in, how do we help children pick the right sound? So until they have that word stored in their long-term memory, our job is to help them with that pattern. You can do that a couple of ways. You can hold up your sound spelling card and point to the pattern. You can write the pattern up on the board so kids can see, we need this pattern. You can, I've seen teachers hold up the sound spelling card and they put a little clip right by that spelling, and then they just move that clip as they go. So rather than having children write the word incorrectly in this multimodality approach, we actually say to them, you will use this spelling today, and are very explicit with them. Because if I have the word train, I don't want children writing T-R-A-Y-N or T-R-A consonant E A-N-E, train. I don't want them putting that incorrect representation into their memory. So we're very clear at the beginning. Here's how we're going to use this spelling today. And you do that before the routine. So I would hold up the card. Boys and girls, we're going to use this spelling today for the A sound. Really? Ready? What spelling? A-I. Here we go. Ready? The word is train. So you do that right before you start the routine so that kids are not guessing. Once they have mapped that word train into their long-term memory, you won't need to do that anymore. However, until it is mapped, we give them that support so that every practice they have is correct. Shelby, would you add anything in terms of the multimodality routine or the sound spelling card in particular, either of those?
I just totally appreciate your guidance on it's not a quiz. It's not expecting that they have already stored that word so that they can spell it correctly, guiding them to the correct representation of that phoneme. Some sound spelling cards or some sound spellings, there are rules, right? Like AY AI for the long A is never at the end of a word. So if you hear A, the long sound of A at the end of the word, it is likely the AY representation of that. So sometimes there are rules around that, and the sound spelling cards help with those, but not always. And so with a card like ice cream, how would you possibly know if it's IE or I consonant E or IGH, unless you've already stored that word? So this is about kind of leveling the playing field for the students who haven't already stored that word, that they can represent it accurately in writing.
Thank you. Excellent job. So we provide that spelling pattern, then we step into the multimodality routine. And as Shelby said, it was perfectly timed. As Shelby said, sometimes there are rules that we can help children with. An example, here are a couple of examples. So before you step into the routine, let me just say this one more time. Once you step into this routine, You want to keep this routine really pure. So you hear it, you say the sounds, you write it, you spell it, you read it. That is activating the two processors within the brain that need to do that sound symbol work. So any support you give students with the spelling pattern comes before you start this routine. The minute you step into this routine, you actually work all the way through it without extra verbiage. So before the routine, you might show the boy card and you might, yeah, just a sec. I knew somebody'd say, what about this one? What about this one? So before the routine starts, you might show the boy card, and on the boy card is OI and OY. You might say, boys and girls, we're going to use these two spellings today. Remember, OI, we've talked about OI is in the middle of the syllable or the word. OY comes at the end of the syllable or the word. So boys and girls, we're going to, and I wouldn't, I'm just going to show you this in terms of the syllable. So boys and girls, we're going to write the word royal. We're going to listen for the word royal. Where do you hear the oi sound in royal? So it's two syllables. Where do you hear it in the first syllable? Royal. Where do you hear it? Right, end of the syllable. What about boy? Where do you hear the sound? End. So what would you write? O-Y. Now let's listen to the word coin. Coin. Where do you hear the O-I? In the middle. Good job. What would it be? O-I. Good. Let's listen to the word point. Point. Where do you hear the oi sound? Yes, in the middle. What spelling? O-I. Nice job. Now we're ready. Here we go. Then you launch into your multimodality routine. Same with AI. AI is typically in the middle of a syllable or a word. AY is typically at the end of the syllable. And then these are just some examples of K and C and CK. Here's at the bottom, here's the really important part of this slide. There are two resources that Shelby and I usually use, and either it is the Logic of English, and that will provide all kinds of spelling rules. For OU, I saw the example of OU, and I don't have I should have it with me. I use the ABCs and all their tricks. So if I were wanting to see if there was a rule I could help my kids with, I flip through and it says OU. And it's represented in the way that we would be using the word like in house. So OU as in house. And then it will give me some examples and it will give me the rule for that book or for that spelling pattern. I use the ABCs of English or ABCs and all their tricks all the time. The other day we were in a class and yep, just a second. We were in a class and the teacher was working with his kids on doubling the consonant. And they said, why don't you double the X? When you're writing fixing, why don't we double the X? And the teacher said, think it's because the X has two sounds. Whipped out the ABCs and all their tricks, looked up X, definitely right there. X is not doubled, it's a consonant and it's after a short vowel in the word fix, but it is not doubled because it has two sounds. So that's an example of how I have that book with me all the time and I'm looking at those rules all the time. I was trying to help my grandson with the IR, ER, UR. His spelling list had all three of those patterns. He's dyslexic, very hard for him, but I was looking, is there an ER, UR, IR rule? And there was not. So there's no help for him with, he just had to, when it came to that, he had to just remember, which is really hard. So one of the things that we might recommend is the resources of Shelby at OW. The ow sound is used at the end of a root and before the final L, N, or D. Otherwise, it's OU. So isn't that helpful? So now I just need to know three things. It's at the end of a root and before L, N, or D. So I may not remember that all of that, but I could use some examples to help them. So it's really important that if we can, we provide students some help in terms of those spelling patterns. The K and the C, that one took me a little bit because when I work with struggling kids, they don't know at the beginning of a word, like the word kick, is it a C or a K? Well, kick is only used at the beginning of a word in front of an I, an E, or a Y. So peg or kettle, we use a K because it comes right in front of an E. That is super helpful for struggling students who don't know, is it a C or a K? And if we can teach them in front of an I, E, or Y, it's a K. Otherwise, it's a C. So I'm going to go back for a minute and just go back to the 3 slides we just talked about for a second. Number 1 is we use a multimodality spelling routine so that kids are able to use as many of these senses as they can to be able to store that word into long-term memory. Prior to starting that routine, I may need to refer to their sound spelling cards. I may need to explicitly show them the spelling pattern so they're not guessing incorrectly. And if at all possible, I want to teach them the spelling rules. If there's a rule that would be helpful for them, I want to teach it to them so that they can use it in applying that work. So now, let's just take a minute and type into the chat box. Oh, yeah. So Shelby just also put in 279 words have the OU sound, 122 are the OU spelling, 122 have OW. So at the bottom of the ABCs and all their tricks, it tells you how many words, so the frequency of that. All right, please type into the chat box something that was meaningful for you with either the multimodality routine for each word when they're learning and practicing at home, the reference to the spelling pattern specifically, and the use of the rules. So will you just type in something in the chat box that might have been meaningful for you related to those things? If you're buying a book, which one would you buy first? Well, I have a bias about the ABCs, but that's because it's easy for me to use. Shelby, what would you say?
Sorry, I was muted. I think the ABCs and all their tricks is a little easier to use as well.
Yeah. All right, so please type into the chat box. Awesome, Jessica. Yes, I use the multimodality routine almost exactly how we said, but even when you tell the kids they get the wrong one, that's okay. That's right. What that tells you, Jessica, is that's feedback to you. They definitely don't have that word stored, right? They definitely don't. And that's okay. You say, boys and girls, here's the word. Check it. See, does it look like mine? If it doesn't, fix it up. They fix it up and they need more and more and more reps. Absolutely. Yeah. Even when you tell them, even when you show them. Exactly. You may have to display that card or display that pattern up there and put your finger up there and say, right here, right here. Yeah, thanks, Anne. I like the idea of telling students up front, and because we're not trying to trick them, we are trying to have their brain store those patterns in that spelling, in spelling that word with encoding in long-term memory. We think it's important to teach the kids the rules. Yeah, absolutely, because that actually creates the transfer, right? So in the word kick, if I know that before an I always comes a K, I never have to think about it. If I know the word in kettle, I know you say the word is kettle and I know, oh, that's a with an E, it's going to be a K, and it always transfers for me. Yeah. Excellent. Jessica, you put a star sticker right on the spelling card on the board. Keep working at it. That's great. In kindergarten, your spelling cards are much simpler. Yes, yes, that's right, they are. And using that multimodality routine, you use it often, but you mostly focus on CVC. Yeah, that's right. And using the sound spelling cards all the time. Beautiful job, beautiful job. So some students, I was working with a teacher who said, I just don't know. They're just not seeming to, these patterns aren't sticking for them in encoding. They are good readers, but they are not necessarily able to do this spelling work accurately. And then a year later, almost a year before the kids had left that grade, the teacher said, they got it, they got it. And it just took an entire year of that multimodality approach to be able to lock that in for kids. So nice job. So several of you, it confirmed for you how you have been doing your work, and that is fantastic. And I think we actually won't do that particular video since we just talked through it really well. So I think we'll actually skip by that for now. In the literacy routine map, you will see, let me make sure that I don't have any black boxes for you. I don't. Okay. In the literacy routine map that you have, there is a dictation routine on there. So if you wanted to go in and look and see, you sure could do that. It is actually just the routine that we just talked about. So, but if you were interested on the literacy routine map, the dictation video is there. All right, here we go. So let's give it a try. So here we go. Here are your sound spelling cards. These are the 2 sound spelling cards that we're going to use. And we're going to do these 4 words. So I want you to kind of practice. If you're with somebody, you can have one of you be the student and one of you be the teacher. If you're by yourself, I want you to just kind of practice it first. So you have the tools you need. So you know, you can look at the 4 words. These are the words, you wouldn't have these up on the board, but these are the 4 words we're going to use. So you'll be thinking, let me just do bike as a model. Boys and girls, we're going to work with the ice cream card today. And on the ice cream card, we're going to use the I consonant E spelling for this word. See where my finger is? I consonant E. What spelling, everyone? I consonant E, right. We're going to, for the I sound, we're using what spelling? Right, I consonant E. All right, boys and girls, here we go. The word is bike. What's the word? Say the sounds in bike. Pick up your pen and write the word bike. If you need to help with the sound, it's right here. Nice job, everybody. Good. Eyes up here. Let's spell the word bike. B-I-K-E. Read the word bike. All right. So now what we want you to do is with place, mice, and same, pick 2 of those words and work your way through that modality approach. So you have a sound spelling card for reference, and you have the multimodality approach in front of you. So if you're by yourself, just whisper it to yourself. If you are with someone, will you actually turn and have one of you be the student and one of you be the teacher, and then flip for another word, right? So I'm going to give you just about 2 minutes. It shouldn't take too long. One of you be the student and one of you be the child, and go. When you're done, will you just type in done so I know that we are good to go? All right, beautiful. So that is really working with the multimodality approach for students. A suggestion would be that if you have parents who are willing to, and your system is that students practice those words at home, helping them know the multimodality approach will help them. Many parents don't have any idea that this is the approach that helps us. That is a brain-based approach for encoding. And all they really do at home often is say to the students, the word is bike. Student spells it incorrectly, or they don't get the kind of support that they need. And so sometimes parents have been very helpful, very grateful to be able to get the support on how to help their children. Once they can see the benefit of supporting their children in this way, they're always very willing to help. They just don't know how. So that's a consideration as well. All right, so let's go to the next one. Oh, let's close this up really quickly. So storing words in long-term memory. This multimodality routine will help them until they have those words stored in long-term memory for both reading and writing. So you continue this kind of approach for them until you can see that they're beginning by the end of the week that they have those words and they're able to store them in long-term memory. You'll see the change when you see that beginning to happen. Once they have those spelling pattern, that encoding, the spelling pattern within those words correct for encoding, then the spelling will come much more easy and much more accurately for them. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about another support for kids for encoding, and that is word chaining. And the important part of this, oh my gosh, I probably can't emphasize this enough. The important part of this is the first 4 bullets on this slide. The words we say will direct the brain to encode or decode. So the words we say in this activity are very important. So I say the word is pin. What's the word? Pin. Write the word pin. They write pin. Now I say change the I to eh. I don't say change the I to E. If I change the I to E and then they read the word, that is decoding. That is actually having them go from the letter print to the brain. So I want them to go sound to print, speech to print. So I say change the I to eh. They change it. What's the new word? Pen. A couple of things that are really important with encoding word chaining. So they start with the original word. You change one phoneme at a time. That's it, just one sound at a time. So they go from pin to pet. So I say change the I to eh, and it's pen. Now I say nice job. Now change the t to, no, sorry. Now change the n to t. They find the n, they erase it, they put in the t. What's the word? Pet. Nice job. Now change the eh to I. They take out the E, the S sound, put in the I sound. What's the new word? Hit. Now change the p to s. So it's still sound to print. They put in this sound. The new word is sit. This can be as simple, so that would be a kindergarten type of a word chain. As you were saying, some of you are working on short vowels. You can do the very same thing with those more complex patterns. The word is chain. They write the word chain. Now change the ch to p. They change it. What's the new word? Pain. Now change the n to ol. Take out the n, put in the ol. What's the new word? Pale. Now change the to new word, male. Now change the ol to new word, main. So word chaining is really helpful for students in manipulating the spelling patterns and manipulating the phonemes and then representing them with a grapheme. That helps with putting that phonological piece first and then representing those sounds in the letter. What else might you add to that or consider with this part, Shelby?
Not a single thing.
Okay. So when thinking about, and let me go back here and do this first. When thinking about encoding word chaining, I guess the really important piece with this is that you change one phoneme at a time and that you represent the change in the sound or the phoneme, not the letter. So I wouldn't say pin, change the N or change the I to E. I would say change the I to E, which keeps it with sound first, then print. Sound first, then print. I want to exercise that encoding work within the brain. So will you type into the chat box what might be something that was either confirmed for you or something new to think about in terms of encoding practice, encoding word chaining to support students' ability to encode. Something new or confirmed for you in the chat box with encoding word chaining. Writing as they say it is important to confirm the process. As they are saying the sounds, I think that's what you mean. Monticello, we'll just double check that. Oh, beautiful, Cambridge. I love that. So is it encoding word chaining where they're changing the sounds? Or are they changing the letters? Use word chains in your tier 2 group. Good. So for both of you, sounds. Okay, beautiful. I love that. Because if it's changing the letters, we are directing the brain to do decoding work, print to brain. If it is sounds and we are manipulating sounds and they change those, that's encoding support for the brain. Beautiful. I love that. I really love hearing that, Cambridge. That's awesome. Nice job. Let me give another second. I see some people typing. So let me give one more second to see what else people are adding. That's nice. Great.
Well, and the topic today really reinforces what we spent time with in February, which was 2 months ago in this collaborative call, orthographic mapping. And if you remember, and you were a part of that call or watched that call, 2 of the necessary skills to orthographically map are that you have letter sound skills. So you know those grapheme representations, and you have phonemic awareness. And both of these spelling, I'm saying spelling in quotes because this isn't traditional spelling. This is actually instruction in spelling. Both of these are supportive of developing those 2 skills in students, knowing the graphemes and then becoming more phonemically proficient.
Yeah. Thank you, Shelby. All right. Beautiful. So now we reflected on what our spelling or encoding work is. So now let's just reflect on something that you might like to add to your repertoire. It may be that you share some of this work with parents. It may be that you have been doing the multimodality, but you haven't necessarily done the phoneme, the encoding word chaining. Maybe it is that you have done a part of the multimodality routine, but haven't necessarily had them do all of those pieces. Maybe you haven't been doing any of the pieces yet, but you're thinking about some. So will you just type into the chat box something that was, actually, I think what we'll do is we'll do it this way. Don't type it into the chat box. Let's do, and I'm going to do the groups really quickly. Let's do a breakout room. And if you are in a group, if you're in a group with a lot of people, will you just mute? So Shoshone and Monticello, you can just mute. Let me see what I have here. Yeah.
And Cambridge.
Yeah. And Cambridge. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. Excellent job. All right. So will you just quickly talk with each other? Each of you have a group where you can be. We just talk about some things you learned today or some things that you've been doing that you want to be sure to continue to do based on the work. So let me double check and see. Cambridge is all in one room. Okay. Great. Good job, Cambridge. I'm going to actually add a room and move you by yourself really quickly. And then I will do the same with Monticello. All right, so you are in good shape. Okay, ready? Have a great conversation. I'll call you back in a few minutes. Share what you have been doing or something you might add to your work based on today. All right, have a good time.
Do you want to hit pause?
Yeah. To give some space, and you can unmute or you can type in the chat box. What comments or questions or considerations might you have just in this very specific work about spelling, really, / encoding? Are there any questions or comments or considerations that you would like to unmute and ask or say? Or type in the chat box? All right, very good. So sorry. Making sure you're using the sounds, not change the letter name. Yeah, that's really great. Cambridge, we were talking about that while you were in the breakout room. That is a very subtle nuance, but in terms of what the brain is asked to do, having it be sounds and manipulating those sounds within those words is a different task. So appreciate that. That was some learning for me as I have studied this. That was actually something I didn't realize before, that the tasks that we're asking the brain to do depends on the words we say. So yeah, I appreciate that input. We appreciate hearing that. All right, beautiful job. So today, here is your link for saying that you have been here and done the work together. We hope it was helpful for you. It was a very narrow piece of work today, but you were a very bright group. My goodness, we were also saying while you were in the breakout room that you were more well-versed than any readiness group we've ever worked with before in all of the cohorts. So we are working hard to bring you precision that would be helpful for you. So nice job. Nice work, everybody. So this is the attendance sheet for you. You can use the QR code so that you have the credit for being here. And if you're watching the recording, please do the same. And it was our pleasure to spend this hour with you. It went pretty quickly, we hope. And thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you. Yeah, you're welcome, Jessica.
Happy spring, everybody.